first question is, what are the ways that you, your family, or your community have been impacted by colonization? Or what in your upbringing has allowed you to be receptive to ways of being that are not colonialist or colonized?
The colonist legacy, thinking about it right now, it's really interesting because for some reason I thought that some of my identities were less circumstantial, like gender. Like, what are the chances of me being socialized as femme versus being socialized as male, which is already a binary? Because I was socialized as femme, I'm in this tradition of the colonization of femme, non-binary, non-cis men bodies, right? That are coming in different ways around the world. I was talking about how, again, circumstantially, because of the location that I'm in, I don't get enough sun. And so my illness has to do with me not having enough access to the sun. But that allowed me some very small glimpse of what it is like to be disabled with my chronic health challenges. But at the same time, it was not clear to me before that. So it's circumstances happening how it's happening in my body. I really shouldn't be here either. It's just a reminder of like, well, it's not a coincidence. There are darker skinned people who live here in the Turtle Island, but part of that is we don't have any of those traditions, or very few of those traditions allowed to flourish. And so we don't really know as dark skinned people how to take care of ourselves here because the indigenous traditions have been disrupted. And it could also just be a chunk of my body is generationally has been grown on another land. It's like you're shifting the soil, it's going to change. The body doesn't adjust that quickly. You put things in it as things are being pulled out of it. And at the same time, humans have a right to move and migrate, but not at the expense when the people of the land are not allowed to migrate and move or have any control and agency over where to go. So it's like holding so many threads of these legacies that are passed on. Another one that is really interesting to me is I'm middle caste. And when I speak with Dalit Bahujan people from India, they call me upper caste because the disparity is so bad that there's absolutely no difference. They can't measure it's so bad. They can't even measure the difference between middle and upper caste people, even though upper caste people are somewhere else because middle caste people can see it. But people who are out of caste, it doesn't matter. That's how bad it is. To me, middle people, just to say it in a funny way, have always been a wedge in empire, right? In empire building. We're always given just a little bit, so we'll go along, right? And we're oftentimes put in the place of maybe not doing direct like violence on people of the land, people who actually live close to the land and have a connection with the land, but we're certainly making things very, very rough. And sometimes the little that we're given is not even that much. So it's like, what does it take to throw everyone else under the bus, right? Again, some things I'm thinking about. The idea of being an immigrant, losing culture, language, the way you look, being not anything that you see around you, losing community. So while I carry a lot of power because of my privileges here in the States, I don't really have very much community. And that really is like such a big part of being a human that it's just something that I'm very intimately connected with because I know what it is like to have a community. I grew up in India for just a little bit. I know so physically how awful it is when you don't have community. So those are some of the legacies of colonization that I can think of, not even really even mentioning whiteness necessarily, like specifically and naming it. I think that this can happen anywhere. European countries have like the last terrible damage, like, but it's not like our own countries weren't already on its way, right? Like Hindu supremacy is the longest running colonist experiment that is known. 5,000 years, right? So it's like, of course this is going to happen, right? Like the British learned how to divide and conquer the world by watching Indian people doing caste. These are some like really hard-hitting things. We are wherever we are. We've been fed the myths we've been fed. When you find out the truth, it's really important to just put all your attention to keeping that truth uncovered and doing your best to be in real relationship with the stewards of the land. Find them and then show up properly, right? Like we have zero right to be here. So to make that change, to really believe it, that's a lot of work. We are where we're at and we'll try to figure it out. And this doesn't, I'm not talking about people who are brought here against their will. Like that's a very different relationship. My legacy has been, for whatever reason, I'm here because of a choice. And some of that choice might not feel like it was much of a choice, but it's certainly more of a choice than people who are coming in without paperwork. So you have to hold those lines no matter how hard it is, particularly middle class people. Everything is so hard. Well, yeah, for that little bit of comfort, we've created a lot of grief. So we're getting backsplash of that grief.